Sit back, relax, and join William and Lee on their journey through the strange and mysterious world.
And welcome to season 2, episode 21. And we have our, what should I say? Our local, our local and our local guru. I shouldn't say local. I should say.
Yeah, we got a strange and mysterious world's guru. That is in-house guru.
Yeah, in-house guru. Kiara is back again. We're going to be chatting a little bit about some, we spoke about it a few podcasts ago about the up and coming shifts. What to expect and now how do we prepare for it? And Kiara, the funny thing is we had a chat to Mark Bynes, a South African guy, and he deals with energy healing. And he was saying that he measures the Earth's frequencies, and he's finding that the frequencies over the past few years have kind of gone up quite a bit, which would probably explain a lot what's happening in the world today currently with everything that's going on. But in your opinion, do you really think that it's a major thing that's going to be happening in next year? Or do you think it's just going to be like a gradual process that will take probably the next, 7,000 years before we actually start seeing difference, seeing change? And I'm not talking about the crap that's going on currently. I'm talking about, because what he said was, when we get to this point, the Earth basically, the people that are on the lower world, who are not connected to the source, will not reincarnate or not incarnate back onto the Earth, because the Earth is now kicking off all the negative. And it's only got to keep the positive, the positives. So if you're on that higher frequency, you'll be able to incarnate back on Earth. If not, you're going to have to bolt somewhere else. What are your thoughts on that?
He also said, what was quite interesting, he said, even the people that are here now, if we don't match the frequency of the Earth rising, and we are like denying it, or like fighting in our lives, we're not like raising our own vibration, it manifests in ourselves in like crisis, like either a health crisis or like a crisis in our lives, like our world start falling apart, like we can't manage our lives, our emotions are all over the place, we start getting sick, very sick, which is going to make sense because it seems like that's going through everyone at the moment anyway. But so sorry, back to Lee's question there.
Well, that's a huge question, and I keep asking myself how that all comes together and plays out. And based on certain mechanical factors, also based on the trajectory of spiritual consciousness, I feel more and more that this is imminent, and that it's not just one event. It's a series of events that could go for at least the next 20, 25 years. But it's interesting, Will, you and I were traveling with Bibu last month, and he spoke about the end of the Kali Yuga and the movement into Dwapara Yuga starting March of next year, 2025. So I think that's one of the triggers. I mean, that's more of a metaphysical choice point. But when we look at other points, other factors, like the galactic superwave coming in, like the solar micronova and changes within the sun, which affect the Earth's magnetic field, and then the imminence of the Earth's magnetic field reversing itself based on what's already happening. So we are seeing already that the Earth's magnetic field has dropped in intensity at least 25 to 30% in the last 200 years. And so we're on a steady decline. It's becoming more and more exponential. And I think that this collapse of the magnetic field and then the reversal in the opposite direction is key to what we're speaking about. So we're talking about a vibrational shift, possibly talking about timeline shifts. What's all that mean? So yes, I do feel like the Earth's vibrational frequency is increasing. Your friend Mike was probably speaking about the Schumann resonance. So this is like it's a resonance that has to do with standing waves between the Earth's surface and the core. But within the standing wave, there's harmonics. And these harmonics are continuing to increase because the vibrational frequency of the Earth is allowing the higher harmonics to now land, which means that our vibrational frequency as physical bodies linked with our emotional, mental, and causal bodies is also being activated. So it's not just that our vibrational frequency is changing on a physical level, it also means that our physical bodies are becoming linked with the subtle bodies and all the way up to the soul body, the spiritual body, which means that we can have access to information, to healing energies, to vibrational frequencies, to soul resonance, which hasn't been the case for a long, long time. So when we're speaking about a timeline shift, so what I see is there's a divergence happening. So there's an old vibrational frequency that most people on Earth are locked into, which has to do with old karmic cycles, subconscious patterns, the whole story of human history, which has to do with duality and fear and being triggered by violence and greed and perpetrating that through the generations. The other vibrational frequency has to do with soul resonance. And more people are discovering that they're coming into soul resonance, this magnetic collapse and reversal as part of that. We can talk about how exactly that works. And so what happens when this vibrational shift takes place? And I think there's a process here which very few people understand, including myself. I think it is exponential. I think there's been a long, long period of preparation leading up to this point. But when the actual shift happens, it's going to be very immediate, very sudden, very powerful, unmistakable. So we're not just talking about a subtle, paradigm shift that few people are able to actually understand. Every single creature on this earth will experience this in an unmistakable way because it's affecting our physical bodies as much as our mental, emotional, and soul bodies. So now let's get into how exactly this works, because this has been a study of mine for the last 30 years. And I haven't found any others speaking about this in precisely this way. So I really want to, check in with other investigators and scientists and researchers to see if this makes sense. And so the way I look at it, I'm going to compare this to the process of what happens when someone dies. So there's a subtle body harmonic known as the Merkaba. It's a geometry centered around the heart that holds all the different bodies together. When I say the 5 bodies, I'm referring to the Vedic understanding of this, which is the 5 koshas, the 5 coverings around the soul. So there's a physical body, the etheric body, the mental, emotional, and soul bodies. So these 5 bodies are linked together through electromagnetic fields, and specifically what's known as the Merkaba. And this Merkaba is centered around the heart. And it's beautiful, it's multidimensional. When you look at the Merkaba, as some people can, through their subtle vision, it's like Alex Gray's paintings, incredibly subtle and multidimensional and beautiful.
What did you say, Alex Gray?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's a painter who is also very psychically gifted. So he sees all these patterns and then paints them. So this Merkaba is tied to the physical and etheric body through the heart and continues to function through the heartbeat. When the heart stops, this Merkaba collapses. And this is what happens at the moment of physical death. The heart stops, the Merkaba collapses, and then what happens is that the release of the Merkaba activates DMT, dimethyltryptamine, within the pineal gland, which allows the soul then to exit gracefully out through the physical body into the various subtle dimensions to find its own home. Now, the activation of DMT is basically the doorway into the subtle realities. It's how the soul manages to leave the physical body. And it's when it's done naturally, it's seamless, it's smooth, it's easy, it's effortless. The soul knows exactly how to exit.
Okay,
Imagine.
let me ask you a question before you carry on there, Kiara. So
Sure.
the human body, what you're saying, we've got five ethereal bodies that surround us. One is the emotional, the causal. Now,
I've including the physical.
Yeah. So so are we saying then that the Merkaba holds these bodies together? So you're saying it's almost like a magnet. You're saying a magnetic field. It's a magnetic field that's holding everything in. Now, what happens to those bodies once you die? So yes, your soul leaves, but what happens to the other bodies that were there?
Right. That's the key question. So the physical body obviously disintegrates over time as it decomposes, it returns to the ground. The etheric body is tied into the physical body for a time. As the physical body decomposes or is cremated, the etheric body also then returns to the elements. And whatever the personality structure that's built into the emotional and mental bodies, that also then slowly separates from its locus within the physical and etheric bodies and returns to its source within the causal body. So this is what reincarnates. So this may take time. The process of disintegration of the emotional and mental bodies can take weeks or months, which is why it's not a sudden, death is not a sudden process. It's only sudden as far as the physical body goes. The etheric body may take 2 or 3 days to separate and disintegrate. The emotional body and the mental body go through a life review process. They go through, whole process of healing, integration, supported by various aspects of our being that are that dwell within the higher dimensions. A lot of angelic beings and higher energies that are supporting our journey to slowly move out from attachment to the physical reality and into the higher worlds. That's when we can then come back and reincarnate. Once we have managed to integrate with the soul body, then we can reincarnate with new possibilities, new soul purpose.
So the soul body then is the eternal body.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And then the soul body is also the body that astral projects at night. It's the soul body.
I think it's linked with the soul body, but what actually astral projects, I would say, is the personality structure, which is connected with the soul body, but it's still held within the emotional and mental bodies. Okay. So it's our personality that astral projects. We, as we understand ourselves, you as Lee and Will and Kiara, we are not the soul body because the soul body is not identified with a particular incarnation.
Okay.
So it's this eternal soul. It's the spark of the divine. And
So if
slowly,
you so Kiara, so if you get cremated, because you say that that etheric body stays with the body until it's decomposed, but if you get cremated, then what is it? Just like
Yeah,
an
it
instant
also
thing?
also starts dissipating.
yeah, I would say that if you get cremated, the etheric body dissolves quicker than if you decompose, or if the physical body decomposes, which is probably a good thing.
I'm getting cremated. But okay, so now my worry is, okay, so you pass along,
Yeah.
you've got your certain bodies, which kind of actually almost links into the the ancient Egyptian beliefs, because they believed in the Ka body, the Ba body, which were the ones that went into the underworld. One body went into the underworld to go and face the life choices that it's made, and then the other
Exactly.
body moves on to other things. So that kind of makes a lot of sense. But my worry is now, okay, so we move out, the soul body. Does the soul body have the memory of you as the being?
Yes. So,
Okay,
okay,
okay.
so connecting this with the Egyptian, the 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 Khat is the physical body. The Ka is the emotional body. The Ba is the higher mental body. And then you go to the Ak, which is a constructed body, which then links the lower bodies to the soul body. And then you have the Ab, which is the soul body. So you have many different bodies that they spoke about, which are, some of them are actually created bodies. So when you're building the light body, so through their initiations in the pyramids and so on, they're actually building the Ak, which is capable of traveling through space and time. So the Ak of, say, Seti the First is available today and can um, show up in your home, speak to one of you, communicate, and then instantly disintegrate and return to wherever it needs to be next. So that's like the Ascended Masters. So they knew how to build the Ark body. And this is one of the keys. There's a book called The Search for Om Seti by Jonathan Cott.
Okay.
And it talks about how Seti the First actually projected in time forward to meet with one of his lovers in his lifetime as Seti the First, who was a British woman who ended up in Abydos. Um, and so her whole story of how she would meet with him physically, he would show up in a physical Ark body, and they spend time together, very physical, and then then he would leave and seemingly disincarnate and then show up the next night. So these things are not uncommon. Um, it's just that most of us have closed ourselves off from the possibility, and so we have um, we've disallowed that possibility. So these are all metaphysical truths. These five bodies are linked together. They're linked together through the Earth's magnetic field. As long as we are on Earth, it's the Earth's magnetic field that holds these bodies together. So now we come back to what happens when the Earth's magnetic field collapses. So imagine one person dying physically at a certain moment in time. Now imagine the entire planet going through that death process simultaneously at a certain point. And this would have to do with the magnetic collapse and reversal. And so the final stage of the magnetic reversal, according to the elders in the Maya tradition, the Inca tradition, this is what they refer to as 3 days of darkness. It happens very quickly, within hours, within 2 or 3 days. So this is the moment when this shift actually takes place. What happens then is that just like in a physical death, where the Merkaba collapses and DMT is released, and the DMT allows the soul to exit from the physical and etheric bodies. So the same thing happens when the electromagnetic field collapses collectively. The five bodies for each human and perhaps other mammals. They discombobulate. And at that point, the soul can actually disincarnate, very quickly exit from its locus within the five bodies, go back to its source, and then choose whether or not it wishes to come back. Once the Earth's magnetic field realigns, so it collapses, goes down to almost zero, realigns, magnetic north and south switch places, and then as the magnetic field strengthens, the soul can incarnate in a new way, a new frequency, to a planetary frequency that's different. So the whole Earth uses this moment as an initiation. So she is also going through her own initiations as a living conscious being. So these 12,000-year cycles are evolutionary gateways from Mother Earth. And so new species are created, old species die off. What's possible, and this is something I've spoken about with a lot of people, discussing the possibility or the probability that the human species is actually coming to an end in the way that we presently understand it and experience it. So, many people speak about moving from the human to the divine human, from a certain vibrational structure that we identify with as based on the mind to a vibrational frequency based on the soul. And what happens when this shift takes place, where the human gives way to the divine human? It's a vibrational change that also penetrates right down into our genetics. Our DNA is different. And all this happens very quickly. So it's initiated, it's a birthing process during this magnetic reversal. And then it may take a few years, a few decades for it to stabilize. And at that point, the new species has been birthed. It may start with children who are more flexible, more pliable, more plastic. And then the rest of us will maybe a little bit more set in our ways and our conditioning, but at the same time are open to change. We know that this is why we've chosen to come here. Our souls resonate to the new Earth frequency, and therefore we are able to reincarnate within the same physical incarnation. There are also, I would say, many who choose not to come back. So many of them might leave during this doorway, but not come back to physical form. And that's okay. This is a choice they're free to make. And they can come back then when we have established ourselves as a new species in a body that's capable of holding this higher vibration of soul. Or they move on to another planet, another timeline, where they can continue to learn the lessons of karma. Everyone gets to experience what they need to.
So, you were saying that the magnetic gravitational force of the Earth has been diminishing over the last 200 years. How has that been? How did they figure that? How do they measure that?
Yeah. There are websites where you can actually. There's a researcher, Ben Davidson, and he's done some pioneering research in this. And his website, one is called suspiciousobservers.com, and he also has a YouTube channel where he goes into this quite extensively. And another website, magneticreversal.org, he goes into the graphs and exact measurements. The European Space Agency has a series of satellites that are measuring the Earth's magnetic field and periodically plotting it on graphs that show exactly when these collapses happen. So what they show, for instance, is that roughly starting about 250 years ago, the Earth's magnetic field started to weaken at a certain rate. So maybe 10%, 5 to 10% in 100 years. And then accelerating a little bit, maybe then 10% in the next 100 years. And then another 5-10% in the next 10 years. And then another 5-10% in the next 2-3 years. So it's like you can see how this, you know, I'm not necessarily quoting accurately, but if you look at the graphs, you can see that there's a very sharp exponential decline. And if you follow that, and it also depends on what human consciousness is doing, because we're all part of the equation. The Earth, Gaia doesn't exist without us humans. So we are also part of the equation. But if you keep plotting this, anywhere between, I would say, next year and 2046 would be this moment of collapse and reversal. And it's tied in with other cosmic phenomenon as well. So
it's funny you say 46 because Bibu with the Yuga shifts, he also says that the changes in March next year, and then the actual big calamities. And I mean, it's all people that are interested in this must just listen to the pod. We interviewed him a while ago, but did he say 46 or 36?
36.
I think around
36.
40.
Or did he say 46?
No, I said 36.
Where the catastrophes happen.
That's why I still said, hey, it's another 11 years.
Okay. So you're saying it's 46, Kiara, and he was saying it's 36.
And
But anyway, it's close enough. It's close enough.
Close enough. 46 is the research based on Douglas Vogt, VOGT. He's got a book called Reality Revealed, the Theory of Multidimensional Reality, something like that. And he talks about a 12,048-year clock cycle. So I speak about a 12,000-year cycle just to be, just to generalize it. He's very specific, 12,048 years.
And that's also like that's also the Yuga cycles of 12,000 years there.
Yeah, so you have the 24,000-year cycle. And so you have the positive and the negative wave, sine wave, which together make up the 24,000-year cycle. So yeah, so every 12,000 years, you cross the center point and something happens. Every 6,000 years also, it's like a relatively minor event. And then every 24,000 years is a mega event. But we are probably at the mega event that takes place every 24,000 years, which has to do with not just the movement from Kali Yuga to Dwapara Yuga, but I've talked with some people who speak about a much more drastic or much more dramatic shift that takes you on a journey directly into the Satyuga. So many timelines. It could mean a split into 4th, 5th, 6th dimensional realities simultaneously. And each of these realities could represent a different yuga. I don't understand how this linear time and multidimensional time actually come together, but my sense is that this moment of magnetic reversal is the key to splitting these timelines so that multiple possibilities become simultaneously active. And those who choose to be in 4th, 5th, or 6th dimensional realities will find their way into wherever they need to be.
So what do you think happened 6,000 years ago, or the last 12,000 years? Is that why we don't know who built the pyramids or the Mayan temples or the Inca? Like, what happened? Do you think the last time this happened?
So the last 12,000 years has been Atlantis. So exactly about 12,000 years ago is when Atlantis went down. So it was
the deluge of what Noah's Ark and all of that.
Yeah. So the magnetic reversal followed by crustal plate displacement. So you not only have the reverse of the geomagnetic field, you also have a shift of the Earth's crust relative to this current geographical poles. So in other words, pretend that the Earth is like a tangerine orange, and the skin of the orange can slide around the mantle. And so when the weight of the polar ice, so when you have magnetic reversal, there's a layer between the mantle and the crust which gets liquefied. There's some fancy name for this. But when that happens, the crust slides around the mantle. It's different from tectonic plate movement. The entire crust slides around the mantle and can move 90 degrees to a whole new location. So the poles become equatorial, the equator becomes polar. So it has to do with the weight of the ice at the poles. It's like a washing machine. When this layer of the mantle becomes liquefied, it shifts 90 degrees.
The weight of the thing just pulls it over.
So there were massive land masses that sank, new land that rose up.
It's quite amazing that anything actually could survive something like this, because it sounds so catastrophic. But there's scientific evidence in rocks. They've measured it that there's been many pole shifts because there's metal that it gets pulled in the rock through the magnetic force of the Earth to a certain direction, and then it's suddenly in the rock it shows that it's changed in another direction. Then it shows it's changed in another direction, and so the scientists say that that's because of it's a pole shift that's pulling the metal on the rock this way, then in that way. And then even Einstein has also theorized, or when he was alive, that we actually due for another pole shift. Is the pole shift the same as what you're talking about?
Okay, I want to distinguish between a geographical pole shift and a geomagnetic pole shift. And even a geomagnetic pole shift, we're talking about the difference between an excursion and a reversal. So when people talk about a geomagnetic reversal, in a long-term reversal, the last one was maybe 780,000 years ago. This was an actual reversal where the Earth's magnetic field reversed and remained so for hundreds of thousands of years. Now, what happens in an excursion is slightly different. There's a reversal, but it doesn't last so long. Somehow the Earth's magnetic polarities return to its original polarity after, say, 100, 200,000 years. Now, why that happens, I don't know. But you would still see the magnetite within the fossil records or the volcanic record showing a reverse of polarity, but not lasting as long as it does for the reversal. As far as human civilization, it doesn't matter. They're both the same. It would collapse human civilization. We're so fragile. One solar flare that's large enough can completely disrupt electronic communication, could disrupt transportation systems or internet. Everything that we need to survive is based on the power grids. It doesn't take much to disrupt the power grid. As far as our civilization, we could be back in the Stone Age, whether it's an excursion or a reversal. So yes, this is a critical time. When this actual event takes place, it's very possible that there could be extreme loss of life, not because there's going to be earth movements and changes, but because we're so fragile and interdependent in a very chaotic world. Unless we know how to survive and have planned to be off grid and know what to do and are patient and calm enough,
Are you saying the solar flares, because the Earth's magnetic field's dropping so rapidly that the solar flares, even a small one, well, the solar flares, they can affect Earth more and more because obviously the magnetic field's getting less, that those flares are coming through. And I mean, what was that? Was it the Carrington event? Is it called the Carrington event? That was like 100 years ago, whenever they had telegraph machines, and that one solar flare fried all the telegraph machines. And if we have one as big as that now, we would be screwed.
Even if we don't have something as big as the Carrington event, because, like you said, because the Earth's magnetic field is getting steadily weaker, even a relatively minor solar flare can have the same effect as the Carrington event. So in April, we had a solar flare that was moderate size. You saw the aurora borealis down almost to the equator, the aurora australis almost up to the equator. That was an example. Now that's just the beginning. If you see something similar to that, slightly bigger, it could disrupt the Earth's power grids, especially at a time when we're going through so much economic chaos. We're already at a point where the slightest fluctuation can lead to a complete banking collapse, which leads to a societal collapse. The wars going on today that are being instigated, they're also related to solar flaring. There's a relationship between the sun and solar sunspots and human consciousness. So there's a lot of
because I've heard like solar flares, like whatever state of mood you're in, it actually heightens that to intensity. So if you're living in a state of fear, anxiety, and depression, those solar flares will like ignite that even more. But if you're living in like a state of peace and calm and love, it also ignites that. So you could probably even go into states of ecstasy. So it depends which scale you're on. It pushes you in that direction. And that's also.
Does it really do that though? I mean, my niece was telling me on the weekend, the one that was gonna get the whole trip, acid trip going. But she was telling me on the weekend that she started getting headaches like at certain times, and she wasn't understanding why, because she doesn't suffer from headaches.
Yeah.
And somebody was telling her about solar flares, and she said, "No, man, can't be." And then she actually went on, I don't know if it was the NASA site where it tells you the solar flares and whatever. And she made a point. So when she had a headache, she would go in the morning to go and look. And lo and behold, there's a solar flare. She said 99% of the time she had a headache, there was a solar flare. So I didn't actually realize that it would actually interfere that much, really.
So there's a lot of headaches are just the tip of the iceberg. A lot of illnesses, virus-related, bacterial-related, and also Kundalini activations. Some talk about ascension symptoms. It's also related to solar flares. It's also related to magnetic shifts. It's also related to vibrational frequency changes, Schumann resonance changes. So, this happens in spurts. Astrological events also affect our bodies. So because we're getting more and more sensitive, the relationship between these five bodies is becoming more and more important. So if this relationship is strong, then we can actually move through these changes relatively gracefully. If our physical subtle bodies are disconnected from our emotional mental bodies, which are disconnected from the causal soul body, we're going to have a much harder time.
Okay, so I've got two questions here for you. So the first thing is, all right, so this is happening, right? We've established that. First of all, what are we expecting to see, in your opinion? That's the first question. And then the second thing is, how do we prepare? How do we get ourselves into the higher frequency? What do we need to do to get there?
Oh, good. So, okay, my book, Gaia Luminous, I'll just plug it in here.
Gaia Luminous.
All of this in quite some detail, looking at the physiological aspects, the geological aspects, the astrophysical aspects, the metaphysical aspects, the psychological aspects, the societal aspects. putting it together, seeing how they, because this is a cycle. And our consciousness determines it ultimately, which timeline we're choosing, how exactly this is going to play out. So yeah, so what we're going to see is a highly accelerated process of highly accelerated process of activation of new species. So remember we spoke about how each time we go through a magnetic reversal, we also go through evolutionary changes. There's extinction of species, there's new species that suddenly come about, millions of them. So this is one of those moments. I've already noticed, like, I look at one thing I love doing is bird watching. I've noticed that there's new bird species that weren't there 20 years ago. They suddenly showed up. There's many species going extinct, which is part of the natural cycle. And then when new species come up, it's not like, Gaia is somehow losing the species. It's reintegrating herself in a new way with a new vibrational frequency, which then calls in the species from universal genetic codes that are most relevant to this particular vibrational state. So she has a purpose and plan. It's not just haphazard. It's not something that we need to feel is tragic. Including the loss of the current human species, because there's new species replacing that, which will be not just a transitional species like ours, but a much more embodied species. So this is something I'm really looking forward to. And many indigenous elders have spoken about this. They said, when this time comes, don't go into fear. Welcome it as an opportunity for new incarnation, for transformation, not just on an individual level, but on a species level.
Okay, so like on the human being side now, so we're going to be experiencing natural disasters, which is currently happening like now in America, in Florida, but there's bits of Florida were sunken. There is obviously solar flares that are happening and probably more frequently. We've got now wars going on that's going to be increasing. We reckon World War III probably very soon. So besides the human side of it, because of maybe the mental state of what's happening, like you're saying, the Earth is becoming, the magnetic field is becoming weaker. I'm assuming that's affecting a lot of people's human, especially those guys that are on the lower world. It's affecting their minds. They're making stupid decisions. They're doing stupid things. So we're experiencing the physical side of what we're doing to ourselves, and then we're experiencing the natural world of what nature's doing to us because of kind of what's going on. So it's kind of a culmination of both, in other words.
And for those who are not connected, so if the 5 bodies are not connected together, then they're going to experience more of the breakdown. Okay. If they're linked together, and this is what meditation is about. This is what conscious evolution is about.
So how do we get there? What do we do? What do we do to help people to get to that higher level? What certain meditations must people be concentrating on? Because I meditate every night, but I might be just doing the stupid stuff. And then maybe there must be some specific stuff you should be doing.
Well, I would say it's Vipassana meditation is useful because it includes the physical body. Anything that includes the breath, includes the body, includes awareness, includes sensations, movement, coming into the physical body, being in nature, connecting with the forces of life, the elemental kingdoms. So it's not just meditation that takes you away from existence here on this physical plane, because a lot of spiritual practices are about transcendence. Now it's about descending and integrating. So that's important. And whatever practices, that can help us to link with the energy body, which is the prana body. So chi practices, qigong, and breath, um, uh, emotional healing, and mental awareness. So we're also linking up the emotional and mental bodies to the personality and the higher personality structures, which have to do with the soul.
Yeah.
So,
So
when the
sorry,
soul
okay.
personality can be harmonized, then that frequency of light can enter into the etheric and physical bodies and harmonize the physical body, our health factors, our ability to walk on this earth without being, thrown off course um, by the new energies coming in.
All right. So let me ask you another question. I'm linking on to kind of the healing stage. I was kind of, William sent me this link to this guy. It was quite shocking. But the one thing that there was a takeaway from this link, from this, I don't really want to talk about it yet because it's quite a shocking thing. But he was going on about drugs, and I'm talking more about mushrooms, the natural stuff, where people in the ancient time were using these things for like your healing practices, those kind of things. What is your take on that? So I know we're discussing, like you're saying, go out into nature, communicate with the elementals, or kind of get to understand or feel them or whatever it is. Do you think that these type of hallucinogenic substances like mushrooms and a couple of other things, do you think these help? Do you think these help the body to get to those certain frequencies? Because I'm assuming you would then understand, your eyes are open to what's going on around you, really.
Okay, I'll answer that in two different ways. One is, of course, yes, they do help as long as we don't get dependent, as long as we can create a bridge between the different bodies. Otherwise, what happens is it creates a split between the higher and the lower worlds. So, of course, yes, especially the natural plant medicines. The second thing I would say about this is that, remember we spoke about how at the moment of physical death, DMT gets activated, and that allows the soul to exit from the physical body. Now, DMT is the substance that's present within plant medicines like ayahuasca and psilocybin. So in this moment of magnetic reversal, what happens essentially is there's a collective activation of DMT. So imagine the whole world being on ayahuasca at the same time, just like that. For 3 days of darkness, this moment of,
Is this what's going to happen in when the magnetic poles shift?
Yes, yeah.
Everyone's in ayahuasca.
Sweet.
It's
I wish I was working in an office. I actually wish I had an office job when that happened, because that'd be amazing. Imagine
just get the
sitting there in like a
dates
bank,
and then go and sit in your office.
No, but I want to be around other office people, like normies. I want to be around the normies when this happens.
I know what's going to happen, I would think, is in the days and the hours leading up to this actual moment, none of us will be able to function. We'll start losing our minds, losing our memories, losing a sense of self, all this in a very natural, gradual way. And even our sense of fear begins to diminish, because fear has to do with attachment to a certain way of being, which has to do with our personal structures, a personality structure attached to the mental and physical, mental and emotional bodies, the survival stuff. So once that begins to dissipate, I would say most of us will be able to drop into our hearts in a way that it becomes pretty easy to surrender to what is taking place with them. So when this DMT then gets activated, you're not going to be putting up much resistance to it. So including the characters sitting in the office, they're not going to be stuck in the mind. They'll be able to drop into the heart in a way that they can naturally step into that soul frequency.
So do you think this is like the coming of the Christ, the new coming of the Christ that they talk about in the Bible?
The second coming.
Dropping into our second coming, sorry, not the new coming. That would be.
I mean, there's so many different ways you can phrase that, but it's the transformation of humanity.
So basically,
William, hold on. That on that question, I'm going to get back to that thing now, because that freaking link that you sent me, the guy mentions that specifically. He says, what was the guy's name? Amon Hillman. Amon Hillman. Wow. But anyway, the actual, what he was saying, the biblical terms for everything that the guys were using is all big, it's misinterpretation. They didn't interpret things right, and they didn't understand Greek. What he was saying, the Christos, the actual Christos, what it means is it's actually a pharmaceutical term. It's a drug. It's basically a drug. So if we, maybe what he was trying to say is that if we understand the use of these things properly, back to how it was done in the beginning, we'd be able to reach a higher ascendancy. Maybe I'm assuming
we'll reach the Christ consciousness, because he said
correct,
the Christos
correct.
Christ was as a like a hallucinogen, and then the Antichrist was the antidote to get off that.
Yeah.
Or anything, something like
The
that.
antidote, yeah, 100%. The dote
Was
to the antidote.
Antichrist.
Yeah. So yeah, that was quite interesting. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it's to do with consciousness. I think it's to do with the shift. The second coming is the second illumination, maybe. What's for the human being,
Shambhala, or like
to be
heaven on earth.
illuminated. Yeah. Although yeah.
So basically, Kiara, you're saying that we just got to sit and meditate through this and just be really conscious that our neighbor doesn't come and eat us in the process, because the solar flares have wiped out the satellites, and there's no more transportation, or there's no more food or whatever. So you're just going to be sitting there meditating through this and just you're going to be like what's his name, Will Smith and I Am Legend in the bath with a shotgun and a dog, and you're just meditating your ass off trying to get to this high plane, and watching the neighbors don't come and eat you.
Well, I think it's hard to meditate when you're in fear.
Yeah.
So the first step is to understand what's happening. So when these things start to happen, you don't need to go into fear. Then you can relax into it. Then meditation happens naturally. You don't have to force yourself to do anything. You just surrender to this very powerful force that's now starting to move through your five-body system. It's a universal force. It's the descent of the Christ consciousness. There's a point where we do the best we can. We use effort to prepare ourselves. But then there's another point where we surrender, and this light just descends on its own. And it has such a power to it that it's not possible to resist anymore. And I think that's the lead up to this event. We prepare, and part of the preparation is understanding what's happening, understanding the cycles behind this, understanding what's happened in the past is also a preview and a prediction for what's happening in the future. So all the prophecies that the indigenous people made, the Hopis, the Mayas, the Incas, the Indians, the Egyptians, they were based on an understanding of these cycles and the history of the past. So they could then, based on that, predict what is to come. Maybe not the exact date. There's a certain progression. And now, because of our ability to track these events, track the collapse of the magnetic field, track the incoming galactic wave, track what's happening on the sun, we can maybe begin to predict more specifically the exact date and the timing and the sequence of all this.
And that's also probably why they buried Göbekli Tepe, was because they needed to make sure that it was preserved. So at this date, we could figure, like, it could be opened up. We could figure it out, hopefully in time before this all happens.
Sure, yeah. It's a calendar system.
So, also, Kira, what did you think of Wim Hof breathing? Does that align the bodies? Does that align those all those
Oh,
bodies you were
absolutely.
saying?
Yeah. Yeah,
Is that a good one?
sure. Well, because the Wim Hof system energizes the prana body, so that creates a link between the physical and the etheric body. It also allows for release of um, emotional trauma. So it also creates links to the emotional and mental bodies. So you're releasing old patterns of conditioning or traumas that are locked into the physical body. So if someone's doing that consciously and every day, it's a huge help. Any kind of pranayama, any kind of practice which works with the breath, works with awareness, and works with sensations in the body.
Yeah, so because like I also got initiated into Sadhguru's Shambhavi Mudra Kriya, which I did religiously twice a day for a year, but then I kind of but he said that aligns all of the bodies. He said that
Yeah.
aligns all of the bodies. But
Yeah.
I just did the Wim Hof thing. There's a lady here in Cape Town that does the training with the and I went there, which was amazing. I mean, I've been doing Wim Hof breathing like every day for years, but I actually just went to because I've just been doing it from learning the off YouTube and his app and stuff. But it was really cool to go do the actual course. Um, and then sorry, Kira, I just got one last question for me. Is that okay? So these scientists they've seen this decline in the magnetic field of the Earth. What do they say is going on? What is the materialistic point of view from this? What are they that's the so-called the science the experts say? What is this? What's causing it? What do they say?
Well, that's a good question. I think many of the scientists are able to track these cycles. They understand the timing of it, but they may not understand the purpose of this. They may not understand that the past is not the same as the future. They may not understand that there's an evolutionary spiral guiding all this, that what happened 12,000 years ago and the destruction that happened back in Atlantis is not necessarily what we're going to see this time, because our consciousness is in a different place, because our evolutionary spiral is no longer about three-dimensional timelines. And that's why it's so important for us to consciously choose a different timeline, a different possibility, a different evolution. And that's what's happening. Many, many of us are now awakening and remembering and choosing differently so that, this next evolution will be different from the past. Now, a scientist will not be able to determine exactly what happens because all they know is what they're tracking with these mechanistic cycles. But that's why I feel like it's important to combine the scientific worldview with the metaphysical worldview so that we recognize that we're not separate from the process. We are part of it. It's not happening to us, it's happening through us. And then we have choices. And then once we understand the big picture, the patterns of evolution, we can actually step into it and consciously become part of this evolution. Instead of taking billions of years to evolve to the next level, it can happen in a few short years. Because now we are no longer separate. We are divine consciousness evolving through matter and into matter.
Wow, what a wonderful place to finish it. Hey, Leah, do you have another question?
No. It's fascinating. But we'll definitely
And
bring
also,
our in-house guru on again.
yeah,
Especially
no,
through this
please
year,
do.
because we got to be we got to be pointing out all these things that are, as they're going on. So we'll definitely maybe
You,
once a month or once every 2 months. Hopefully Kiara
Yeah,
can come on.
yeah. Sure,
and
love
you,
that. Love that.
and
I also want to quickly say to end uh, my my trilogy, which you've seen, Will.
yes,
Issa, Mirjan, Elmira. This is basically about um, an archetypal reality that's now um, embodying itself through humanity. So it loosely follows the story of Jesus and his travels in the East, and what happened and where he his own teachers and experiences, his marriage and children, which is different from what the West understands up to this point. But more than that, it's also about an activation of these genetic capacities within each one of us. It becomes our own story. So if our listeners have an opportunity to check into that on Amazon, starting with Issa, son of the sun, and then Mirjan, daughter of the moon, and then Elmira, child of the stars. So this is like a fictional parallel to what I write about in Gaia Luminous and Homo Luminous, which are more non-fictional, factual interpretations of what scientists are coming to understand. So check that out.
Okay.
Yeah, so please, guys,
so-
like, yeah, look at his books on Amazon. I've read the Issa one, the Jesus one is absolutely amazing. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to reading the other ones. Thanks, Kiara.
Yeah. Just, yeah, thanks, Kiara. Yeah, man. And thank you very much for coming on such short notice.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Will. This
Yeah.
is
Yeah, it looks like you've ascended already into the other dimension. Then.
Yeah, in the darkness.
No, we can't see you anymore.
now.
No, cool. Thanks, Kiara.
Cheers, Kiara. Thanks so much, man. We didn't even get to your dolphin story, but anyway,
No.
we'll do that next time.
Yeah,
Next
definitely. We've got lots to talk about still. So yeah, we'll bring him on.
Okay.
Oh, I tell you, one of the experiences I had this last week in Egypt with the dolphins, it has to do with confronting an entity, which has to do with this whole political the arena that we're entering into, which there's a story for another time.
Oh my gosh! So we got our
yeah,
next episode.
Yeah, 100%. Good.
Dolphin prophecies.
Dolphin
Love
politicians.
Political
No, cool.
dolphin political prophecies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, Kiara.
Good. Thanks,
Thanks,
Kiara.
Lovely to talk
Cheers,
with you.
man.
Yeah, cool, man. Yeah, sorry to our to our viewers there. If you're on the YouTube channel, Kiara's obviously out in
Turkey in the wilderness.
yeah, he's in
and
Turkey. So yeah, it's dark there, unfortunately. So yeah, his lighting went pretty bad out there. But yeah, we got the message in, and yeah, good. I think this is going to be something we need to follow. Well, I think quite. You know, even if when we're doing other podcasts and something's happening, we need to just refer back, even if we spend a minute or two before we get on with the next with the topic that we're busy with. Something, if something happens, we need to say, hey, listen, just remember this is happening currently. Remember where we are. This is especially up to the leading of the 31st. I think it was the 31st of March next year. We just need to keep an eye.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to check it up to that. Phoebe's right.
Yeah,
I better get my documentary out before that, because if the world ends and we actually all die, or like transform into I don't know,
well, apparently it's only
we didn't ask Kiara, what do we transform into? Are we got like two heads, one head? Are we glowing? Are we like a different?
Well, apparently we're still yet till 2046.
But if we all die in March and we don't come back as anything, then I better get the documentary out before we all die.
You better get my move on one out there, man.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, now awesome. Thanks, bud. Anything else from your side, man, before we close off?
Yeah, that's it, Lee. Cool, man.
All right. And then yeah, we'll definitely discuss that thing that he Amon Hillman. Man, you should never have sent me that thing. But anyway, we will discuss.
I did. It's fucking disturbed me.
It was heavy, man. Jesus,
it's disturbed me since I watched it as well.
Fucking hell. But anyway, that's cool. Guys and girls around the world, thank you again for listening to us and subscribing to our channel and to our YouTube channel. We do appreciate it a lot, promise you. And we do this for you guys, for the enjoyment. So yeah, hopefully to see you then. Cheers, guys.